I want to apologize. I was distracted. We had some people come home. My son came home, and so I was focusing on the sounds. Somebody coming in the house. I didn't know who it was at first, but the last video I was probably a little distracted on that. I kind of left that hump. Anyway, we're doing a couple box talks, depending on how they lend to the video, so that I can accomplish many things. As a request, there are some out there who have wanted to check out the box, who have wanted to be able to take a little time, sort of a hands-on museum. It's from Notchville too, right here. So remember, the last video has an X-22 report. I would highly suggest, if you have some time on the road or whatever, just click over to it. Get it on the YouTube's feed and listen to it. Because David and he's actually discussing and has some sound bites in there from other people. Look at that Marl Mountain, will you? And I'm talking about heavy duty. It's a big, thick piece. I'm sure coming at velocity it would break bone and it would do the job it needs to, no doubt. As opposed to something like this that's very thin from the edge. How fine that work is. It's beveled. Still being real careful. I'm serious. A lot of you guys can relate. I about can't stand even the thought of dropping some of these. So, very careful with that. Now, as we look through here, following the requests of, I think it was one or two people that just asked me and said, hey, what on earth do you have going on there with that tackle box? Well, you get to see it a little bit here. Now on this video, this came from Mecca right here, some variated material. I'm going to post a report from SGT Report. It's profound. It really is just a round table. Of course, it's political subject matter, but I was impressed because it is a great discussion between a libertarian, a liberal, and a conservative. And these are great people. And just are able to rationally talk about current events and things going on, as intelligent human beings who do not always agree, and there are many subjects they don't agree on. So, I mean, it's profound to be able to listen to in a way that we should, as people, especially as Americans, be able to relate. Unfortunately, it's difficult to relate when you talk about politics with some people who have become emotionally ruled. We can't be emotionally ruled. We're going to feel differently about lots of things. We have to be principle ruled. We have to have a rule of law to hold that principle down. And if you don't even care about that, then there is no foundation for a discussion at all. Some little teeny points in here. Look at this thing. So I'm going to go through here and just make some comments about different things. So I really appreciated the SGT report that's on this link, just because I could listen to these guys. They're really intelligent. They're authors. They're accomplished, smart, but they're from different points of view, discussing the best for our nation, for the United States of America, from different perspectives. And coming to agreement on some things and agreeing to disagree on others. And it's very difficult, as you've seen, for some people to do that. This is a famous point. I actually found it on Election Day, 2016. That's why I pulled it out. It's a favorite. Anyway, now here's a point that, it is good quality crystal. And it's ground. Sand Passage, which I think the property at Sand Passage, which is off a highway, got sold, and they haven't been real diligent to farm it. through the last year, maybe two. So I don't know what they're going to plan to do with it in the spring. You know, you have those properties that change hands or get sold, and maybe commercial farming doesn't go into it. And we all have those sites that change like that. This is an incredible point, isn't it? And they just, I think they transform. Many of our sites do transform. And, you know, you just have to move forward and do your best with it, what you got going on. Look at this point from the Cascade. I can grab a hold of it without dropping it. I'm doing this through the camera, so. Anyway, I wanted to do a couple of box talks to accomplish showing some people who have recently showed up on the Indian Trace and just have some really great comments and some great heart about how they feel about the artifacts and about politics. So I would have a platform to be able to share some of the links, because listen, these links that I share are censored. The so-called employees of YouTube are hired to regulate and to censor people's points of view from you. They think they know better what you should hear and what you shouldn't hear than you do. And to me, that's a disgrace in the United States of America. This is a great point, isn't it? Unique. Unique, unique, unique. So let's sail around here and take this out. Anyway, I'm not going to talk too much about that. I just do want you to make sure that you consider. And if you have any comments or thoughts that you don't want in a public forum, under my description, I always post an email that you can write me. And that's where a lot of these comments came in. And they just wanted to, you know, share their point of view and their thanks. And I appreciate all the thanks for the efforts that I make, because if we don't work hard to establish and to fight for freedom ourselves, there are people who are determined, bound and determined, that they make a better choice about how to live than you do. They don't consider the fact that you're intelligent, thoughtful, smart. They don't consider that fact. Now, none of this stuff is really second rate, but you sort of have to determine where you're going to put stuff and how you're going to keep things. Look at this piece for a second. It came from the clay pot as well. It's the dirty quartz I was talking about. So if any of you hang through these two videos, or maybe I'll make another, I'm not sure. You sure love the artifacts of the North American Indian, because these don't bore you. And, you know, thanks for the comments. A couple of you guys said, you know, it's not just the artifacts, it's the ability to connect, not just to God, and how He has set up God's plan for man here on this earth. Because you'll pick that up in my videos. But the connection, the vital link we all have to politics. You can't get away from it. You can try as hard as you want to pretend it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's in office. But because of the corruption of the last 50 years, the corruption since the Kennedy assassination, we can see it does matter. It does matter who you give your freedom to, who you give your allegiance to. That's a great point from the clay pot. I'm not going to get on my bandwagon. Look at this big, and these are rare, crystal or quartz Guilford Yuma from the jump off. My goodness. Chunky. Just made hard. Due diligence. Carried a lot of weight. Man, and a strong arm commissioning that. I love the quartz here. I could stay in it forever, but I won't. Look at this point here. Just catches my eye. This point from Saponi. This natural light's just incredible. So I think what I try to accomplish with Indian Trace, and I try to define it every once in a while, is our link to keeping our minds open to where these artifacts fit in the timeline in the United States of America, where they fit in terms of how we view and how we must be, I think, studious about politics. It's a great point, isn't it? Solid. Solid, solid, solid. And I think finding these artifacts encourages me to be diligent, encourages me to consider the possibility of gross injustice, abuse, that you and I and everybody is capable of if we don't have certain rules in the rule of law. Law and order. Bunch of serrated points. This bin, these are very rare. I don't find these that much. You know, when I was first collecting and finding them, I'm like, oh, great, great, and you move forward. But now, after 6 short years, I realize these are ones that you do not find that often. Look at this point. This is from the archaic. You can see the cortex, and look at this. Some of you have seen it before. The cortex is right on the bottom, so they hit the flake right off from the other end, came the other way, and then they just went to work on figuring out what would work, how to make it work. Relieved. Unbelievable how some of this stuff survives through serious, violent machines. I mean, look. Marl Mountains, we looked at those the other day. So as I get ready to finish up, I do have a bin of sort of Schneider-looking points, but just the small notch points. This came from Sand Hill. I think if we don't let the history of the people who made these affect us in establishing the history that's happening today and being a part of it, well, you can sit down and check out and decide you're not going to be a part of it. But you have children. You have loved ones who might come after you and might have really appreciated you being an active part in their freedom, their life, or the liberty that they have. It's not just going to be there if we leave it alone. I've seen too much. I've learned a little bit, and I do know for sure that candidates that were just beaten in the 2016 election, as well as before that, have been evil. Bad, not just corrupt, bad people. I'm sure of it. Then there are those who aren't perfect, but they're good human beings, such as the president we have now. Every bit of misinformation to assassinate his character and his personality is just that. Huge doses of misinformation. So just a little bit of a box talk. It's the only time I really get through these things and just take a slower look at the past, going through these. So as I finish up here, let me pull this one. I know it's nice. It's from B&B Field. Of course, right next to Mecca. In Mecca and B&B are where you can look forward to possibly finding a serrated artifact. Something else, isn't it? I appreciate everybody tuning in to Indian Trace. And that right there, that's Indian Trace.